most urgent issue, the one that Mary identified. And I think I am equipped to address that issue because I have fought terrorism. In fact, even to the point that I was called to Washington one day, I was told I needed to be there the next day, and they said they'd tell me when I got there why, and I got there and they said that the head of the Colombian coastal cartel had been recorded in a conversation saying that they planned to take out the U.S. attorney from the Northern District of Florida, and that would be me. And so I've been there. I fought these people, and I think I have some sense of what it's like to fight those who are murdering innocent people, like the Jamaican posse that was sending a bomb here to Mariana Gardens to murder someone at that time.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dunn.
Thank you. You asked what was the single most overriding important issue to the nation. And on Friday, I would have said it was healthcare. As I looked at the premiums going up 40 to 60% next year and struggled with how we were going to pay for that. On Saturday, I thought it was the economy. It's stagnant, the jobs picture is awful, and we're so deep in debt that we can't even conceive of the debt that we have. On Sunday, it became national security. I think that we can't take any of these in isolation and say that is the most important question. We are going to have to fight on multiple fronts. One of them is not the bathroom question, I agree. This is where we need to fight, on these three things: in healthcare, the economy, jobs, national security, abroad and at home. If we engage in an intelligent way, all of these, I think that we can bring our country back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moran, you get the last word on this question.
I think our greatest threat is sending the same establishment insiders to Washington and expecting a different result. That is the very definition of insanity. These problems aren't new, and it doesn't help us to continue to restate the problems. We need to fix some things. We need to send some new people to Washington, and a fresh face isn't going to make it any different. A fresh jar of the same medicine that hasn't worked for 100 years isn't going to help you this time. Let's start sending some people up there that are going to look at this differently and stand up for what we want, not take no for an answer, and come back and be able to look the people in the eye that we asked to send us up there after we've come home. You'll be able to look me in the eye when I come back, because I will not waver.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sukawa, you'll be first on this question. This was recently submitted by the audience. There's not a single person on the panel who can accomplish their proposed ideas alone. What type of networking or coordination do you propose to achieve your goals once you're in Washington?
Well, I think anyone who has worked with me would know that, I am principled. When it comes to certain principles, I am not going to budge, because I feel as Martin Luther did when he said that, I am bound by the clear testimony of Scripture. My conscience lies captive to the Word of God. Here I stand, I can do no other. And I feel that way about certain issues. However, where I can compromise and where I can work with people, everyone around me would know that I'm someone that is willing to be cooperative and willing to work out ways of compromising in the same way I think that Ronald Reagan did and accomplished much in that fashion. So I agree, it can't be done alone. And I would indeed be willing to work with people and to compromise when we're dealing with issues that are not basic, fundamental principle issues.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dunn.
Thank you. I think government is, as you said, inherently a team sport. However, teams need leaders. Now, I have a history of being a leader in business, in healthcare, and in the military. One leads by making coalitions. You work with the people around you. You have to work productively with the people around you. In the state of Florida, we're going to have a minimum of 9 new congressmen out of 27. We need to be able to build a pro-Florida coalition. We need to be able to work with people that that agree with us, and we need to be able to push the ball down the field, not back and forth across the field. That's the history that I've had all my life, and it's really why I'm going to Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moran.
Washington is broken. So this is not about getting endorsements from career politicians saying that you'll be the best one to go to Washington. This is about going up there and making changes. You want to talk about being able to negotiate? Stand between a drug-crazed teenager with a butcher knife and the mother that he wants to kill. All three of us are still alive today. That's called negotiation. If you can do that, there is nothing in Washington, D.C. that will scare me. I will be able to build some partnerships, and we will stand together, and your voice will be heard.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Thomas, you have final word on this question.
Well, I was proud to have been endorsed by the House Freedom Caucus, and there are a core group of conservative congressmen and women who are standing up for our conservative and our Christian ideals in Washington. They're the ones who got John Boehner out of office, and I'm proud to have their support. But in my work as Governor Scott's representative in negotiations against the Department of Justice, the liberal Obama administration and the Department of Justice were saying that Florida had no environmental damage, and so we shouldn't get any money. But we had huge economic damages. And I was one of the ones of our team who remained firm and got the liberal Obama administration over to our side, and we ended up getting a good result for our state. That's the same thing that we need to do in Washington. There is far too much compromising going on, compromising with Obama and the liberals. And we need to have people that will get them over to our side and not compromise our strong, core conservative ideas.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Dunn, you'll start this next round. What can and will you plan to do about the tax difference on imported goods, which are taxed less, versus exported goods, which are taxed more, that's killing local manufacturing, such as what we enjoy here in Washington County?
So we have a topsy-turvy trade world right now where Americans are punished at multiple levels by taxation. Where the corporations are taxed so high that it's hard for them to be here in the first place and produce it, and then the products that are being made elsewhere in the world scoot in at artificially low prices because they aren't taxed at home, and they get a chance to sell them at a far lower rate because of that. It's clearly damaging our ability to be self-sufficient manufacturing and deliver manufactured goods and services here in the United States. And we need to turn this around. We need to make a much more friendly trade environment that helps Americans prosper, manufacture, export, make things, and deliver services at home and abroad. We can do that with better tax laws and with better treaties.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moran.
The other day we were at a forum and we were asked this question about trade agreements and import and export tariffs. And they said, well, maybe we can talk to a senator that may or may not change your position on something as far as tariffs and taxes. And I said, you know, this is exactly the problem that we're facing. We don't have businessmen up there in Washington that have actually produced something. I produce things. This is what my company does. I work with companies and individuals overseas. I know what it's like to do that. I know what trade is about. And if you don't get someone up there that truly understands business and has worked in the private industry and worked and imported and exported items that you've produced, then you just don't understand. And you're back to theories again instead of real life experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Thomas.
I believe in free, fair, and balanced trade because that brings prosperity and security to all nations who engage in this. But we need to make sure that our American workers and our corporations are protected. And one of the things that we need to do to help our manufacturing industry, we need to decrease corporate taxes. Corporate taxes right now are as high as 40%. And in my plan, I call for having a tax that is 14.5%. and also allowing corporations to bring their money back to the United States at a 0% rate. We're going to create jobs. We're going to have economic growth. We need to take these measures, and we need to protect our country.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Sakai, you've got final word on this question.
I agree that principally the problem is that we have no more belief in our capitalistic free market system here in this country. And it seems as though we have conceded to, or at least our president has sought to move us into the direction of a socialist and secular country. And part of that process is convincing people that the socialist sort of approach to the government control of production is something that we should look favorably upon. And so the whole thing is mixed up in that regard. And until we get our corporate taxes down, they're 39.5%. The developed nations of the world have their corporate taxes are at 24%. Until we get ours down and where we can compete on the same level, we're going to constantly be behind in that regard.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moran, you'll start this next round. Where's Fletcher? Fletcher Dillmore standing up here. He headed up our local Young Republicans. He's currently attending FSU. And this will just simply be a short answer from each of you. He has asked that I ask you, if elected, will you be the keynote speaker at FSU College Republican Gala next spring? That date to be announced. And we understand that you can't make a commitment because we don't know what that date is, but Mr. Moran, you'll start the next round of questions as well, but if you would start this one off, and I'll give you all a chance to at least answer his question.
I'd love to, and Dottie sitting right there handles my schedule, give her the dates, and make every possible attempt to be there.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
As the only candidate on this stage who is a Seminole, I say that I will be there. Go Noles, and I believe that it's time for a new generation of leadership in Washington. It's time to get some fresh, new conservative voices up there.
Thank you, Mr. Sakai.
Yeah, I think you had enough of me this year, didn't you? When I was clearly the best. They had all of us there this year. We had a lot of fun, so of course I would.
And Dr. Duff.
Fletcher, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I had a great time. Last night was a heck of an event, by the way. 300 people and sit-down dinner. I'm so impressed that the college Republicans could pull that off. I'll be there, win or lose.
Thank you. And Mr. Moran, as I pointed out, you will be the first to answer this actual question. And it's very abbreviated, so will you allow all veterans to use any medical facility and any doctor? And I'm presuming that what they're asking is, obviously now veterans are required to go to certain facilities, and is there something that you are able and will work towards should you be elected?
Yes. I'd like to first go back a little bit, though, because I got to tell you, I take exception to say that businesses cannot compete in a global market. I have more cars that I've manufactured in Europe than I have in Florida. Yeah, it's tough, but it can be done. So if I can compete in an area where everyone says I can't, I can also compete in Washington. Let's go back to the healthcare issue. Yes, I like the choice program. It's a good concept. It lacks some execution, but what I will say is let's make sure we take this choice program to where our veterans can go to a local facility, not let them wait. But I'm also not in favor of a privatized healthcare system for our veterans. It didn't work with our jails, and I refuse to put a separate layer of deniability between the government and our veterans that we promise care to.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Thomas.
That is actually part of my veterans plan that's on our website, to allow veterans to make their own healthcare decisions, and that they want to seek private care. That is the least that we can do for our veterans who have given us the freedoms to be able to be here in this room today. And because of my plan on veterans and because of my life story, I've been endorsed by Dale Doss. He's about 80 years old. He lives in Tallahassee. And he was a POW in the Hanoi Hilton, where he was tortured each and every day and stood for our freedoms. I've also been endorsed by the chairman of the Florida House of Representatives, Veterans and Military Affairs Subcommittee, Representative Jimmy Smith, because they know that I have a plan for veterans, and I will fight for our veterans and give them the respect that they deserve.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sakaya.
By all means, I believe that veterans, as I said before, I believe that veterans should be given the freedom to choose where they go. I think that just makes sense. And I'm not convinced that it's necessary that there be this massive federal bureaucracy that attempts to handle what should be handled by the private sector. And it's not as though we're putting a layer between them, because those we're basically saying you can get private. We'll give you the funds. You can get private medical care just like everyone else, and you won't have to wait in all those lines that you've been waiting in. So that's how I feel.
And Dr. Dunn, you have final word on this.
Thank you. I mentioned I am a veteran. Obviously, this is a problem that's very close to my heart. Yes, they should have the choice. Yes, they should be able to go to the physician of their choice. And yes, the money from the VA should follow them, so that if the care isn't being given at the VA, the money that goes to the VA decreases. And that's important, so that you get some control on the size of the bureaucracy that you're dealing with. I also agree that we should not put another layer of deniability between the patients and their physicians and their hospitals. And you're all experiencing that right now, whether you're a veteran or you're in private. The best health care, private insurance in the country puts all these layers of deniability in front of you. For the veterans, it's much worse, I promise you that. In terms of veterans endorsements, I have an embarrassingly large number of veterans endorsing me and working for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Thomas, you'll be first up with this question. This was submitted by the audience, and obviously a lot of emotion and a lot of exclamation points and underlining, so I'm going to read it just as it was submitted. This government is populated with career politicians riding the taxpayer sugar tit for life after being elected only once. What is your plan, and this is all in capital letters, what is your plan for helping end this population of political leeches?
Well, I think one of the most important things we can do is impose term limits to get the career politicians out of our country. And at 37 years old, I took the lead on signing term limits and the U.S. Term Limits Pledge. And I have also said that I will self-term limit, because many of the problems that we have in Washington are caused by career politicians and insiders. But that's not the end of the story. I'm the only candidate who has put a full ethics reform plan. We need to stop the revolving door from lobbyists to member of Congress to lobbyists, because that's only enriching the lobbyists and the special interest groups and not helping the people of our country. We also need to eliminate congressional pensions. The people of our country don't get these pensions, and Congress certainly shouldn't have them either. And we need to have laws such as the Florida Public Records Law and the Sunshine Law be put at the federal level so that our government is more transparent to we the people. And very importantly, we need to make sure that Congress has to follow the laws that they adopt.
Mr. Sakaya.
I also signed the term limit pledge. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's part of the problem. But I think it goes beyond that. I think there's a culture in Washington that is a unique. For instance, I'm told that there are certain car dealerships that only appear in LA and in Saudi Arabia and in Washington, because there's so much money there. And I think when people get up there, they get caught up in that. And that becomes sort of the whole, game. And then they stay there and they become lobbyists. Now, I fought in Florida the lobbyist disclosure bill, which is better known as the lobbyist gift ban. I fought for it and upheld its constitutionality in court. So I have some familiarity with this issue.
Dr. Dunn.
So I am not a politician, and I have no career path leading into Washington. I don't want to be. There's no honeypot for me in Washington. I would much rather be back in Bay County. I feel like all of you do. You want citizen legislators, not career politicians. I would cheerfully sign a tournament pledge if every other congressman would too. The problem is that you give up a lot of seniority to other states.